To delve deeper into the policy signals from China's two sessions and more, we're very pleased to be joined by a group of panelists. At this hour in Beijing, we have Zhou Mi, Deputy Director of the Institute of American and Oceania Study from the Chinese Academy of International Trade and Economic Cooperation. In Munich, Germany, we have Benedikt Sobotka, Managing Partner of Alpha Future Funds and also founding co-chair of Global Battery Alliance. And in Beijing, we have Yang Zhilei, Vice President of Sugon Storage. Welcome, gentlemen. Director Zhou, let me ask you first. We've heard from Premier Li Qiang a lot of data, figures, growth targets of 5%, around 5%, the same as last year. Deficit spending up, and also a relatively proactive policy mix. How do you expect these policy signals to be, transpiring into policies on the ground and to give a boost to the Chinese economy, which apparently has been slowing?
Yes, I agree with you that the world is trying to listen to the message that two sessions are going to deliver. Well, in my understanding, there may be three kinds of messages we can get from the two sessions. The first one is that China is trying to be more stabilized. I mean, for the economy, we know that China is one of the largest economies in the world. So the stabilization is not only important for China's economy, but also important for our trading partners. So they depend on the import of China. Second, I think that China is trying to make more efforts on the development from the domestic market, like the consumption. We are trying to promote more things to do with the consumers' abilities and create better scenarios for them to expand their consumptions. And that is definitely good, not only for the enterprises, but also important for the stabilization of the global trade. And third one is something to do with the innovations. That we can find that a lot of new messages and sectors are being included in this report. So I expect that there are more policies to do with that. As you asked about the policies in actions, I believe that all these messages are together to show that the Chinese government is trying to use a package of all related policies to make it happen and give a very strong signal to the market and make the enterprises to believe that we can do it.
Right. Benedikt, let me turn to you. Thank you for doing this. It's early morning hours in Europe, we understand. So we've heard from the government work report a very heavy focus on AI, on transitioning into a digital economy or AI-driven economy, electric vehicles, batteries that have been China's strength over the years. China have been churning out more of those than much of the world combined. What policy signals did you pick up?
So it's not just about AI, which clearly plays an important factor in optimizing battery management systems and battery chemistry, but the two sessions also came out with, I think, a very firm commitment to green energy and the green transition, and what sector to better to benefit more from this push than the battery sector and transportation and energy storage. And we've seen dramatic investment in advanced battery technology coming out of China. We've seen investments across the supply chain from Chinese companies, including raw materials, which has obviously ruffled quite a few feathers outside of China, and is a big topic of debate both in the US and also in Europe. And we're also seeing scaling up of battery production, which China has been tremendously successful in, and also being incredibly competitive when it comes to battery competitiveness, both from a chemistry point of view, from a cost point of view, but also from a speed to deployment point of view. And companies like CATL and others who really came to dominate the battery industry have done that with a combination of their ability to innovate, to accelerate, and to deploy. I think those three items are very important. What to expect, I think, in the future and coming out of the two sessions here is we're going to see more rapid growth of EV production in China, of EV production of Chinese companies outside of China, particularly in Europe, which is, I think, becoming a battleground for geopolitical investments, and more and more exports of EV technologies, of which China is clearly a leader in both the batteries, but also in the battery inside the vehicle and everything that's related to that. So the technological superiority that we're seeing of Chinese companies in that space is very strong, and it's probably a decade ahead of the rest of the world.
But Benedikt, you said more Chinese EV companies can potentially set up plants in Europe, but let's not forget the investigations against Chinese EVs and the the barriers set against the Chinese EVs not so long ago by the European policymakers. Do you see more Chinese EV companies realistically going into Europe, setting up plants and selling to the European market? Will they be allowed by the European policymakers?
Well, it's happening, right? I mean, CATL has already invested in plants in Europe to supply the local market. No one stops a Chinese company to invest in a Chinese-run, Chinese-managed European automotive construction and manufacturing facility, and we're going to see more of this. The challenge is for Chinese companies to run a purely export-leading model into Europe. That's going to create political pushback, and you see that today. But Europe needs investments, looking at its demographic situation, particularly countries like Germany, like France, like Italy, that are at the core of the European economy. They do need investments and increase in their capital stock. So I think absolutely, yes, Chinese companies should be very much encouraged to set up production facilities in Europe. What they will find is that producing in Europe is not without challenges, right? I mean, one of the reasons Chinese companies are so competitive in China is because the environment, the ecosystem around electric vehicles, around battery cell manufacturing and innovation, that ecosystem is so competitive, and it's not easy to transfer that. So they have to be ready to invest, but they also have to be ready to understand that Europe is a very different market to produce in compared to what it is in China.
Right. President Yang, let me turn to you. We're rapidly advancing into a digital a world where AI is at its core. What that means is the storage and analysis of big data or data, period, is becoming more important than ever. And your company, Sugon Storage, is as a leader in this field, not just in China, but globally. Maybe you can start off by telling us a bit about what your company is doing and your insights after hearing what the Chinese premier said in the government work report.
Okay. So Sugon Storage is an enterprise storage wonder. So we are focused on the so we mentioned it's not a professional storage. So people always say to use the cell phone and some laptop, the storage, but we are doing the enterprise level. So like this room, the backend storage to store a lot of camera data. It's not for the personally. So we do the product is focused on the enterprise level and some national level. So we provide the services for the weather forecast and some sun test research, like that kind of.
You're the biggest in China, right? In terms of
biggest
market value.
I cannot tell you about the who is the number one, number two, but we do a lot of how to say the national mission to give us the how to say the mission let us to complete some technical research. So that is the key. So for us, so Sugon Storage always to do the things is to focus on our major industry like government, like weather forecast, energy, and healthcare, and some education research level. So that is our key advantage to compare with other country. So we always trying to make the leadership in this area.
Right. A lot of legislation suggestions and future potential policy making right now at the two sessions. What do you think all these legislations would mean for your sector, your industry going forward in China, and of course its impact on the rest of the world?
It's a large topic. So just make in a few sentences. I think so. First, we have a very huge market in domestic China. So as you know, the data is grows very fast from every industry. So during the construction for IT system maintenance and installation, like that kind of. So we get a lot of experience from that. So in past several years, we learn and we do more innovation. So currently, the tech knowledge for China storage, I think already get a very, very better position in the worldwide. So that is why we think we already can compete with some the worldwide company in the European, in the American, and we can provide the best product and services to our custom and to the worldwide custom.
Yeah, very encouraging indeed. What's interesting from the government work report is a specification on what China would do next, right? Director Zhou, let me ask you about this. Premier Li Qiang said China will, quote unquote, advance integrated and clustered development of strategic emerging industries, and that includes bio manufacturing, quantum technology, embodied AI, and 6G technology. Wow, that is quite a leap, I would say, from where we are right now. What specific policies do you see as needed to further boost, the development or the emergence of these industries? And where is China right now when it comes to all these sectors? You can pick a few. I mean.
Yeah, I agree that when we mention about the innovation, I think it's one of the key words that we can hear from the two sessions, and also it has been mentioned in Chinese government's reports every year. So I think that new industries and sectors are very encouraging because they are not only able to improve the productivity, but also are creating a better support to the related supply chains. In my understanding, that there are several kind of policies that Chinese government will do. The first one is that we have some incorporation for those new startups. It's including small and medium-sized enterprises. They can do more to trying to make their abilities into the commercial usage. And second, I think it's also important that is we are going to make the two ends of the companies of the real big market to these research centers. And that is definitely one of the priority of China because we have such a huge market. And the third one is we also encourage the companies to trying to do better with cooperation as our partners in other countries because we have the free trade agreements and we have a Belt and Road Initiative. We have so many kind of mechanism and the companies can benefit by China's supply chains, industrial chains, and also improve the resilience on the value chains. So I believe that those innovation-based sectors are still in a very earlier stage when we are discussing about the possibility. I think it's still too early to trying to make a estimate about a precise estimate about the market size. But I believe that it's not only just in one sector. It is a horizontal impact to the world trade, including to improve the goods and also to make a better quality of the better services in the future.
Right. Thanks for sharing, really. Let me turn to our guest in Europe, Benedikt. I know that the Europeans, or at least some European policymakers, they're scrambling to deal with the Trump administration whose tariff measures and others are going in earnest against many European countries, let alone the geopolitics at play, where America is leaving parts of Europe, a much part of Europe, high and dry, threatening to sever to a large extent the time-honored alliances across the Atlantic. So in terms of trade, help us understand the state of mind of European companies and the European regulators. Given what Trump is doing to Europe, will that make Europe that closer to Chinese businesses and Chinese investors?
There's certainly a significant change happening in trade relationships in the West between Western countries, the U.S. and Canada, the U.S. and Mexico, the U.S. and Europe, and that change has been quite surprising for many companies. A lot of European corporates did understand that things under Trump administration would be different to the previous administrations, but the speed and also the intensity of the interaction and the change that has happened has taken a lot companies by surprise. Ironically, the stock market in Europe have actually done better than the European stock markets have done in the past, and also better than the US stock markets, and so has the Chinese stock market. So that's the irony, that even though we have more disrupted global supply chains and we're talking about more geopolitical tensions, we understand that the companies both in Europe and in China seem to be having a better outlook than before. So that irony is difficult to explain. I think we're going to see a much greater role that China will play in mitigating those global economic challenges. I mean, the way that China has defined at its two sessions the economic targets as for the country as a whole, but then also from a provincial level. I mean, we have to understand a 5% growth target is 5% on average, right? So a region like Guangdong has a 5% growth target, which is about 10 or 11% of the Chinese economy. But then other regions that are less economically developed have growth targets of 6 or 7 or more than 7%. So on average, that's 5, but it's very impressive growth rates on a provincial level. And actually, we're seeing something similar in Europe, right? Europe, even as a continent, may have a lower growth than China, but there are regions that are very dynamic, even though they are global economic landscape issues that we have today. And I think China and Europe can play a much more collaborative role in this increasingly fragmented global economy. There needs to be more investment of Chinese companies in Europe, and there should be continued investments of European companies in China. And again, this is an opportunity. I mean, if the United States as an economic entity focuses more inwards, that allows all kinds of opportunities for international players from China, from Europe, to fill in the gaps and to become more involved in countries that are currently very much dependent on trade with the United States. So that's an opportunity, trade diversification, more alliances. And China has done exactly that. It has gone out and strengthened its economic alliances with countries around the world, whether that's in South America or in Africa or in Central Asia. And helped invest in supply chain resilience, for example, for the electric vehicle industry, for the global energy transition supply chains, for the critical raw material supply chains. And with its leadership in sustainability and green technology, China brings more than just money, right? It brings innovation, it brings digital transformation capacity, it brings the ability to scale industries rapidly. And I think in combination with some geopolitical leadership and diplomacy, this gives China a very, very interesting role today in strengthening alliances that may be neglected by the rest of the world. So great opportunities for Chinese companies and also for European companies.
Yeah, we'll see what happens between China and Europe in the months and weeks ahead. President Yang, help us understand, are we seeing a decoupling of your sector as well, or potentially a decoupling of sort? Is China prepared in that regard?
It's a long time. it's a how to say that? So from how we think a lot of things is it's a kind of history we do the research and to learn about from the Western. So currently we are preparing and make a future-ready data infrastructure. And the government have a lot of policy to help the local vendors to do the innovation. And also, we have a large enterprise market to do that. So that is the biggest opportunities for the local vendors to do that. Okay.
And I mean, it would be unfortunate, right, if our friend in America uses an iPhone and WhatsApp, we're using WeChat and the Huawei phone, and the two are not, are sharing each other's technologies. But if that happens, that happens.
I think so. From our side, we think the data currently, the sensitive data is we know many kind of the way to communicate with each other, and we do a lot of the sensitive data management. And I think the government already to to have some more kind of policy to ask the vendor to do how to open the data communicate and also to do the data sensitive management. So, so currently we think that is the easily to communicate with each other with like you mentioned the WeChat and other application software.
Right. President Zhou, that's all the time we have, but thank you so much for your insights, and thank you, gentlemen, for coming on our program, and thank you for watching The Hub on CGTN and Wang Guan in Beijing. I'll see you again next time.